Hi all, I'm Cullen Haynes and welcome to Law Live. Got a special treat for you today, episode 60. My goodness, how do we have 60 episodes already? Coming to you live Wednesday, 12:03 p.m. Could you please make very welcome my next guest, has been in the legal realm for over 12 years, just moved from Minter's, long-standing lawyer there, and is now a principal at McInnes Wilson Lawyers as their first employment lawyer, building out the Sydney team. So please make very welcome. He's wearing his team's colours, so please get behind him or don't hold that against him. The one, the only, Ryan Murphy. Here we go.
G'day, Cullen. How are you, my friend?
All the better for seeing you and hearing your dulcet tones, my friend. I love the colours, mate. Representing.
Please excuse them. A sartorial gentleman like yourself. I know it's probably not all that I don't know, maybe normal to be dressed up in the office like this, but it's a big week for the Murphy family. We're from down in the Shire, so we've got our Sharkies represent. But I'm a Sydney born and bred, so my Swannies in the big dance this Saturday is very exciting.
Very good. Sharky Swannies, let's go. This is fantastic. You got to, I always say, and you know, those LinkedIn fanatics and Facebook people who say LinkedIn is LinkedIn, Facebook is Facebook, got to keep business person, keep it separate. I don't agree. You got to show the whole person. And I like things like this. It's endearing, Ryan. It's endearing.
That's right. And maybe I could have got a Swan's tie or something to make it more formal, and then to go with you. I know you love a three-piece suit, maybe gone a Sharks vest, but that would have made people that cared about fashion vom a little bit in their mouth, I reckon.
Oh, very good, mon ami. Well, what I will say is we are live, everyone. This is Wednesday. We're on TikTok, YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitch, and X. So any questions, please put them in the comments and we'll try and get it over to Ryan right now. And please subscribe to the podcast, which will be coming out very shortly. But the first question, mate, what is happening in your world right now?
Yeah, well, right now is a big time. I'm probably 6 weeks into moving across to McInnes Wilson. As you said, I moved across to start up the employment law team here. So McInnes Wilson's been a firm that's approaching 50 years, and traditionally Brisbane based. We've got quite a strong insurance law offering in Sydney, but I'm probably part of the expansion into more commercial law right up and down the east coast. Offices in Brisbane, Sydney, Canberra, Melbourne, and Adelaide. And so, yeah, close to a national firm already. Definitely very strong on the East Coast and in Adelaide. And so um, I'm basically setting up the practice. So it's taking that's taking all my time when I'm not watching the Swannies and the Sharkies. Is out and about meeting people. We act for a lot of government departments and big employers already. So I'm kind of part of the offering to say, hey, we've already done these other legal things for you, and now if you've got an employment and industrial law question, then I'll do my best to help you out with that. So,
No,
having fun,
fantastic.
mate.
Good. You're doing well. You're doing well. You're making waves, which is what it's all about. And I will make it clear you act for the employer for most of your
Yeah,
engagements, right?
generally. I mean, the employment laws are the same, but yeah, we often act for the employer. Um, so I remember acting for quite a lot of employees when I was in my early years, and a great way to cut your teeth. Though I did find it was hard to act for employees on a repeat basis. Sometimes, if you've acted for an employee on an employment dispute, um, you maybe don't want to keep acting for that same employee because maybe if they're in lots of employment disputes, they're maybe not the ideal client for you. So yeah, I switched over to the employer side, and I like to see that that's advising the businesses. I think is a way to, rather than just dispute by dispute, you actually get an opportunity to advise them about the culture of the whole place. And in employment law, anyone that's kind of been following, there's been a real big push to increase the onus on employers to get it right. So not just when there's a dispute and trying to fix it up, but a positive duty. We've seen that come through in the sex harassment, respect at work stuff, to the
Of course.
underpayment stuff. The Fair Work Ombudsman's talking about it a fair bit at the moment. Is making sure that your you're taking the positive steps to get it right. So acting for the employer, you get to have an impact broader than just a case by case, and I love that.
Oh, fantastic. Well, it sounds, as I said, like you are definitely adding value out there in the marketplace. And I see you on LinkedIn all the time. And it's how we originally.
Annoyingly so, Cullen.
No,
I
not
hope to be
annoyingly
annoying
so at
people
all.
with the amount of posts I'm putting up.
No, well, I always say the whole point of LinkedIn is to take the online offline, and you obviously want to add value. You don't want to be putting spammy content out there, but if you're adding value and you're at the top of the feed all the time, people like it, and they like seeing you out and about. Who are you meeting? What are you talking about? And it just shows that you're a thought leader. And I can't say it enough. You've got to put yourself out there, because it's not who you know, as much as that is important. It's who knows you, because we've all been to the barbecue. And
Yeah,
Bob comes to you and said, "Oh, I just engaged an employment lawyer." And it was like, "Bob, I'm an employment lawyer." Or at least you thought Bob knew you were an employment lawyer, but that's not their fault. It's you got to put yourself out there in this world. But
that's
this
right.
is a bit of a fun one. How would you describe your role and what you do using just film titles?
Look, some days it feels like Titanic, Cullen, I think, which are not the ideal days. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how else to answer that question. I think I couldn't get past the thought of Willy Wonka, and it's fun to kind of help employers kind of create things and create the world and make sure it's. Although in thinking about that, I don't know that Wonka's done all the right things in terms of ensuring that his workplace is very WHS safe. I'm sure if the lovely people from Safe Work went in there, I think they'd have a bit of a field day. And I don't know.
Absolutely.
I'm not
Absolutely.
sure that the Oompa Loompas are getting their minimum award payments as well, Cullen. I don't know. That's
Well, when you
so
can almost drown in a river of chocolate, get expanded by eating the products, fall
yeah,
into
yeah.
fiery pits, get turned
Mm,
into a miniature size on television. Like
it's
there's
questionable
lots
whether he's
going on there.
taking all reasonably practicable steps to ensure their
Yes.
safety. I think, Cullen.
I'd love to ask you this. What would you think? How do you think it would be received if people got contracts that started big and then the fine print got generally smaller towards the end, and they still wanted you to sign? I don't know how that
I,
would go.
I mean, I've read some very long enterprise agreements, Cullen. So maybe there's a version of that. We try to stick to at least size 8 font and not chuck it all into the footnotes. But yeah, no, it would be it would be an interesting world if that's how employment contracts were created. You know what though? I do wonder whether, and there was a bit of talk about this maybe a year or two ago. I wonder whether employment contracts, as they go forward, there might be more of a place for pitches and more exciting things, particularly if you're engaging the kinds of people that maybe English is not their first language. And I think the Ombudsman's putting out some pretty good content around that. So not quite like the fine writing of a Wonka contract, but it's I don't know. The contracts always have to be as boring as we've always had them, as long as it gets the ideas that the parties have agreed across clearly and unambiguously.
That's it. Well, they say the internet is forever. So Ryan Murphy, principal at McInnes Wilson, predicted this. There's going to be board books of contracts that even 3-year-olds can pick up and understand. I'll be getting Benji and Lockie to read it in a year or two.
That's a good idea. Although, if Benji and Lockie are bringing an employment contract to you, Cullen, yeah, come and have a chat to me, because there might be other issues with that.
I think so. I think so. But let's go. I love hero origin stories. I love Joseph Campbell's the hero with 1,000 faces. So let's go back to Ryan Murphy's, maybe high school or uni days. What sparked your interest in law first and then employment law?
Uh, all right. So law. Oh, let's go way back, right? So I was in
Oh,
about year. I remember I was in year 2 at school, and I had
wow.
a teacher whose name was Mrs. Cadwallader, and we called
Shout
her
out to
Mrs.
Mrs.
C because
Cadwallader.
as shout out to Mrs. Cad. It was either Mrs. Cad or Mrs. C, because as a 7-year-old or an 8-year-old, it was kind of tough to pronounce Cadwallader. But I remember a discussion with her, and she was obviously very. I can look back and see that she was very kind and a great visionary and leader. And she said to me, I don't know what I'd done. Maybe a good little 2-minute speech as a year two kid. But she said, Ryan, do you know you could be anything you want to be? Do you know you could be, you could even be the prime minister if you wanted to be? And you know what? As like an 8-year-old, I was like, all right. And I didn't know what jobs existed other than playing cricket for Australia or footy for the Swans. And so I was like, oh, well, I guess I go okay at school. Maybe I'll be prime minister. And so for actually through school, I was pretty keen on the idea of politics. But fast forward 1 or 2 years, and I was like, well, how do you can't just be prime minister? What do you do for that? And so Dad said, well, why don't we write to the prime minister and ask him what he did? And so because I'm probably 10 at this stage. Because Dad suggested it, I was like, "Oh, that sounds like a great idea." So Dad helped me, and we wrote a letter to Mr. John Howard at the time, and shock horror, we got a reply letter back, which I'm sure was drafted by him and not someone in his office, but it was definitely signed by
Of
him.
course.
And it was actually it was an amazing thing that kind of sat on my mantle for a number of years. That basically said that, well, Ryan, there's lots of ways into politics, and we need a broad spectrum of people that represent us. But the way I did it was I went to law school. And so I was one of those weirdos that from primary school, I kind of knew I wanted to go to law school. Now, I thought that was because I was going to get into politics, and I actually don't think that I want to get into politics as it turns out. But in doing that, it got me to I suppose law school. When I was doing the legal studies, I thought, well, this is actually quite interesting. Got a job in a small firm in North Sydney when I was first admitted in litigation, commercial litigation, and
Yes.
I kind of describe litigation a bit like the sport of law. You can do all your preparation and you get ready, but then on court day or game day, it's on your feet. You got to deal with what comes at you, and I loved that. I loved the adrenaline of it. Um, I then probably was maybe a year or two in, and I was so this is how I probably got into employment law. I was doing I was writing a blog actually. We're talking MySpace days, Cullen.
Oh,
After
I'm seeing the code to get that title page
after
perfect and the music
yeah,
in the
yeah, after
background.
I've decided my top 8 friends, and the other thing that I used to post on my MySpace was links to a blog that I was preparing, which I called Socially Legal. Cullen, I was trying to present myself in my first maybe during my legal studies days and in my first year as a bit of a social media law guy, because I thought, well, this is a thing. This is definitely going to be the next big thing. Um, but what I realized was that lots of the decisions involving social media were people getting sacked for stuff they'd done, and so I thought, well, employment law is kind of interesting, and so I went to my boss and said, "Do we do any employment law stuff?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, we do, but I don't really love it. So, do you want to kind of become the guy?" And so he sent me to a couple of CPDs to learn the basics of unfair dismissal, and that was basically how it started. And then I would meet with people for an hour, and if I didn't know the answer to their question, I'd go away and find the answer. And that led me to realize I've probably got a bit of content to backfill here. So I signed up for my masters at Sydney, and specialised in employment and industrial law, and that led to uh, becoming an accredited specialist in that area. And I suppose that's my my 3-minute version of kind of how I've landed here.
That's
Um,
fantastic. And
yeah.
how did you move from Minters to McInnes Wilson? How did that come about?
Yeah, look, I had a great time at Minters. I love the people there. Do a lot of
Shout
great
out to
work,
Minters,
and
salt of the earth.
shout out to Minters. A lot of friends there, and very grateful for my time there. I think that I was able to be wooed by by McInnes at the prospect of what they were offering, and essentially uh, wanting to expand into employment in Sydney, and needing someone to lead that. Um, they were perhaps silly enough to think that I might be the right person to do that, and so I kind of asked all the right questions, and got to know the team that I'd be working with across the various states. So we got employment lawyers in Brisbane and Canberra, particularly. And once I'd worked out that we were a good fit, the idea of starting something and building out an employment team and choosing who we hire and the kind of areas we're going to specialize in, it got pretty exciting, and so that's why I moved across.
Good man. And I think it's a good decision. It's a win-win for everyone. I think you're going to do quite well building out that Sydney team, my friend. And
I
this is
hope
a good,
so.
nice segue. What's a surprising skill that's helped you in your career so far, and maybe even may help you heavily with your expansive journey at
A, su-
McInnes?
a surprising skill. Um, You know what? I reckon I started on LinkedIn because it was the way to feel like, this is years ago, you were doing work without actually doing work. And so I started kind of procrastinating sometimes by putting LinkedIn posts up, and if people would like them and comment them, then I'd connect with them and start to kind of chat in the DMs, like you said, posting online to kind of to then transition that to offline. So I reckon in some ways procrastination has helped me, Cullen, because it's kind of built a bit of a I don't know, a little bit of a following. And you know what? What else? I reckon I've just always enjoyed laughing, and it used to get me into a little bit of trouble in school. I wasn't really the funniest, but I was always the one that the class clown knew that they could sit next to and get me in trouble because I'd laugh at what they said. I remember getting kicked out of an economics class in year 11, and I hadn't even done anything wrong, Colin. I'd just been the laugher. But I reckon that desire to kind of have a good time, as you mentioned before, I don't I don't love the disconnect between being someone who enjoys kind of hanging out with people and then the professional side of things. I think if you're an expert in what you know about the law and you can explain that in terms that people understand, but also just be enjoyable to hang around. I think that's probably something that I try to do. I don't know. I'm sure some people think I'm an absolute bore, but I try and have a laugh whenever you're having a chat, and I think that maybe helps.
I think so. It's all about take your profession seriously. Don't take yourself too seriously, right?
100%, right? Yeah, absolutely. If you can throw yourself under the bus well, at your own expense for someone else's to having a laugh, then I think that's there's something to be said for it.
Good man, good man. And on that note, like obviously what you do can be quite stressful, and the world of a lawyer is a stressful situation most of the time. How do you unwind after a particularly tough day in what you do, my friend?
Well, I've got two little humans who
Ah,
rely on me for provision, um, and so also, you know, it has this. We also have a new puppy, Cullen, and he's a chocolate brown golden doodle or groodle, who we, funnily enough, named Wonka. Um,
there you
so
go.
if I'm wanting to decompress after a tough, stressful day, I will go home. Willy Wonka will meet me at the front door and wee all over my boots. And once I've cleaned that up, he loves jumping all over my face, and I quite enjoy that. And it's, you're very much in the moment when that's happening.
Of
And then just
course.
kicking a soccer ball with my Freddie and Monty. If I'm having a kicking a soccer ball with them, I actually find that when they're doing that, maybe it's a bit of a boy thing when you're focusing on kicking a ball or playing handball. I find that helps them to then share about how their day's been. And you know what, hearing the stresses of a 7-year old or a 9-year old, and just trying to have fun and have a chat with them about it. It's got a pretty great way of being able to take the focus off you. And so that's just, if my ideal night would be that, right? Just come home from work, have a play with the dog, and kick a soccer ball with the boys, and yeah,
I
that'll
think
get me
that's
pretty close to happy.
fantastic. Fantastic way to unwind. Do you ever see yourself plugging in late at night, or once you're home, you're home?
Look, ideal world, once you're home, but that's not the realities of lawyer life and partner life. Look, it probably, I like to keep it rare, getting back on, but you've got big things that have deadlines due, whether it's an M&A deal you're working on, or and there's calls overseas. Australia often gets the slim pickings of times when you're trying to match up with the US and the UK. So that some of those calls happen late at night or very early morning. And then you want to try to be uh, a responsive leader as well.
Of
So
course.
if an employee's, if one of the lawyers I'm working with gets me something, and it's towards the end of the day, and if I can turn that around that night or the next morning, then I like to try to do that so people aren't waiting on me for stuff. But yeah, I mean, general rule, ideal world. Once you're home, you're home.
I like that. I
This
like
right,
that,
this right
mate.
to disconnect, I've heard about, Cullen. I don't know. I need some advice on it. Maybe I'm not great at it.
Well, I love to talk
Do
about
you know
that.
any
Like, what?
employment lawyers? I need to. Maybe I need.
Well, I want to talk about that. Like, we had a coffee about it. This whole right to disconnect. What does that mean? Because I think you have to set the clear boundaries, right? Because if granted, clients think that everything is important and everything is urgent, but legitimately, if the world is on fire and you need to get something done, can you message someone when they're at home at 6 o'clock to get it done? Go.
Yeah, I think the key is not whether what you're doing at 6 o'clock. The key is the conversations that you've had with them earlier that day, earlier that week, to
Okay,
make it clear on what basis you will need them to respond after their working hours. So we're,
I
we're
see.
talking obviously a professional setting here. So we're
Yes.
we're not talking people that are paid minimum wage, and if we're
No, of
talking
course not.
solicitors, they're not going to be covered by a modern award. And so strictly, it's really a matter of what you agree with them, either in their contract or what expectations you set. And unfortunately, I think people are pretty bad at it because these are kind of awkward discussions, right? But if you and the legislation in 353 M, I think it is, sets out a number of um, things that need to be considered as to whether or not it will be unreasonable for someone to refuse contact or to not respond to you or the client after hours. But I think if you have an expectation that something might come through overnight, so we do a bit of industrial uh, law. If I've got uh, the potential of an application for maybe a protected action ballot to come through, which is like industrial action, if I know that that's going to come through, you will often need to respond overnight, and they don't come through all the time. But it's not going to be a surprise to you that there might be you might get served something by the union. By that stage, you're probably pretty heated, and you're deep within enterprise bargaining. So if I'm chatting to my team and saying, look, it looks like the union might lodge something tonight, or we might be served with something. What's the best number to call you on? It'd be great to make sure that we get this done on time because of the commission's deadlines. That's a very different circumstance to, hey, we've got a week to help this business with their employment contracts. Um, I'm going to send it to you at 5:30, and I need you to send it back by 9 p.m. There can be a bit of a circumstance where managers can set arbitrary deadlines, and I don't like someone else's urgency becoming my urgency when I can help it. And so I
No,
try
of
to take
course.
that attitude, and you like to treat those that you work with the same way, right? So yeah,
Well
look,
said.
I didn't. I think it's different in every industry. There's industries that get paid, whether it's under an award or an enterprise agreement, standby allowances or on-call allowances. I mean, those circumstances, it's going to be relatively clear cut. If you're paid money to be waiting, then if you're contacted, if you're going to try and refuse the contact at that time, it's probably going to be unreasonable. I think the grey is going to come through in this professional setting. But the reality is also, um, there's nothing to prohibit an employer or a manager asking the question.
Of course.
I sometimes will send an email, and it might be at 6 p.m. and then maybe I'll leave the office shortly after. If I get a junior replying at 8 to say, "Oh, yep, no worries," I get notifications, so that'll come up for me, and I try to come back and go, "Oh, okay, it's not a tonight job." And you get certain people that show that they're really eager, but I suppose the right to disconnect doesn't stop me from sending the email. Um, though, if I'm being mindful of psychosocial safety, another kind of buzz topic at the moment,
Hmm.
then I probably am going to be a bit careful about maybe the implied requirement for people to be monitoring emails if I'm sending them out of hours.
Of
And
course.
it just that comes down to discussions, right? If I'm going to send an email at 6, unless I'm really clear about it and probably call you and text you following it, I don't I don't need you to read that until tomorrow.
That's right.
In our kind of professional 9 to 5 setting. So yeah, I think if people are willing to have those discussions before the thing becomes urgent at 6 p.m., it's maybe we've had expectations shift slightly, but I don't think it actually will be that big of a shift.
Okay. Good. Good.
I
Well,
don't know. Have
very
you
clear.
have you found that in your world at Legal Home Loans? And
Look, I think we're in an interesting space. Obviously, we want to get the best outcomes for clients, and there are hungry teams. Shout out to Ananya from our team. She sent a few applications, 4 on the weekend, which you're never going to get at the bank. Um,
wow, yeah,
yeah,
right.
but you know, in terms of our clients and their expectations, they know that the banks kind of close at 4 or 5 o'clock each day. So if you can't get it
Uh-huh.
done, like we can get things done over the weekend, but nothing is going to actually get action with the bank until Monday. So
Right.
we do our best to get things done, sometimes after hours and on the weekends. But
Yep.
I think maybe we're lucky in the fact that the suppliers we deal with have a finite time that they're working to get the outcomes that we need. So we need to be ultra efficient during the day to get the
Mm,
outcomes that we need from the providers that are only open over a shorter period of time. Maybe
yeah.
brokers, one man band brokers or one lady brokers will say something different. But that's that for at least our professional cohort that we deal with. That's what we find.
Yeah. And maybe responsiveness is your point of difference. And so
Well,
the
exactly.
the other possibility is that this potentially opens up an opportunity for people, right? Like whenever there's restrictions, you're entitled to rely on what your right is under the Fair Work Act. If an employee
Correct.
decides that they don't want to be bound by that right, then maybe there's an opportunity for them to really excel. I don't want to be encouraging it because people do need rest and recuperation, but there's always going to be a place and an advantage for eager hard workers.
Exactly. Exactly. And I'd like to ask you, because obviously you've been in the business 12 years. What's the most unusual either client or partner request you've been ever asked to complete, either during or after hours?
Oh, look, I don't know. I want to get out of the question by saying, oh no, there it was all confidential. I don't know, Cullen. It's You sometimes get some interesting requests from employees on the other side. I think that um, it's important when you have disputes in the workplace. I don't want to give you an example because it probably some of the more unique requests would be very clearly identifiable if those people are listening. But I think sometimes what the kinds of requests that someone can make can indicate to you what is important to them, and I think that employment disputes aren't always settled by money. Um, People always want, if their employment's ending, whether by restructure, whether by performance or misconduct or whatever it is, or they're resigning and there's something going on in that regard. Um, Throwing more money at it is not always going to get someone what they want. And so I think sometimes when there is a bit of a weird request, it can actually help negotiation because you can realize what might be important to them, and there might be a bit of a give and take in that regard. And the old expanding the pie thing, or creating another pie, not just seeing it as just giving to you means that I'm losing.
No, it's an abundance mindset, right?
That's right. That's
It's
right.
not a finite world that we live in. Well, I hope it
Exactly.
is.
Exactly. No, you just got to reshift your perspective.
Fantastic. And look, I think we got some engagement. Someone saying, as long as employees appreciate the advice that you're giving, I'm sure they do. And I would highly recommend other people to join in. We've got now another 10, 15 minutes in the stream. And thank you for all those watching live or re-watching or re-listening on the podcast. Any
Jump in the
passion?
comments. Do I need to say that this isn't legal advice, Cullen?
Oh, yeah. Put it in there. This is not legal advice. Be
This
sure to
is general comments only, and if you want legal advice, then you can hit me up in the DMs, and we can
hit the
sort out a
DM and
retainer.
let's take it offline. And yeah, we want to keep it evergreen. Do not
That's
act on
right.
anything we're talking about right now.
That's right. That's
Maybe
right.
you can laugh at jokes in the workplace. That's great advice. You should be able to
Yeah.
laugh, even if
Yes,
it
I
gets
think
you in
so.
trouble.
Well, the laughing itself might not get you in trouble. Maybe it's the joke. But yes.
Any passion projects right now? Maybe it's LinkedIn or otherwise that you're working on, my friend, that you're able to share with us.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much. Like we're building a practice here, Cullen. So
Yeah, of
lots of it
course.
relates to writing articles and meeting with people. Um, I'm writing a bit of an article at the moment, which will be a bit interesting. I'm sharing
Yes.
at the Australian Labour Law Association national conference towards the end of this year, and I'm actually speaking about. I'm launching the paper there, so I won't go too deep into in the intricacies of it, but I'm interested in the intersection between the call for work to be entirely remote, because there's been a bit of a call for that from some industries, people across all spectrums, to be honest, across
Yes.
the political spectrum and different people on the union and employee side, but also some business leaders who have been calling for there to be a blanket right to work from home. I'm
Yes.
interested in how that plays out in our new AI impacted world, Cullen. So, artificial intelligence has obviously been a bit of a buzz topic over the past, let's say, 18 months, and it's changing a lot about how we do things, and I think the change is only going to continue to happen. That's going to result in the workplace in some roles being redundant or needing retraining if you're going to keep those people. Now, if there is a blanket right to remote work, then I'm thinking, particularly in a small, medium sized business environment, I'm wondering whether it's more difficult for those businesses to train people. And
Good
so
point.
I do wonder whether people that are calling for entirely remote work and the Fair Work Act in Section 65, happy to talk deep about that with anyone that cares in the comments or in the DMs.
Oh,
There's a current system set up that is legitimate, that people can request flexible working arrangements if they have a particular feature that might warrant it, whether it's being a parent or a carer or having a disability or particular age, or having some kind of family domestic violence situation. Those are protected attributes in the Fair Work Act, and there's already an ability to request flexible work in those circumstances. I suppose what I'm talking about is the general expansion of the right, so that anyone, any non-parent, without any of those other protected attributes, would just have the right to demand to work remotely. I just want to make sure that before any such a right is rolled out, the implications are thought through in this AI impacted world. So I don't know if that's a bit of a teaser for you, but yeah, I'll have a paper coming out about that later in the year. Maybe that's a bit of a passion project of mine. A little bit of research into that.
fantastic. Well, Cogent's insights as ever, and once it's out, I'll post it in the show notes and the comments so people can get amongst it and get their nerd on if they're really interested in it. So,
That's
and be
right.
sure
That's
to
right. We love the law nerds, the Cullen, the,
come
the
on.
the employment and the IR nerds. Yeah, my DMs are full of them, and I love it.
Fantastic. Well, we're getting engagement and people joining in across the socials, which is fantastic. So I'd love to ask you this. We touched on it with the AI thing. Where do you see the legal profession and particularly employment law in the next 10 years?
Well, if we're judging by the next 2 years, Cullen, then
Come on. Let's go
everything is
right.
going to change. We've seen so much change uh, through through uh, through the federal parliament in the past 2 years. Look, employment law is an interesting one. It's often ideologically based, so it,
Yes.
it might be dictated by who's in power in the next 10 years. Now, whether Anthony's party is able to succeed, or whether Peter jumps in and jumps in the federal parliament, I think that's anyone's to predict. But that will probably impact the direction we go. Um, as to the legal profession, yeah, look, AI. I don't. I think a lot of I had the benefit of being at a very large firm as OpenAI dropped ChatGPT, and Minters was a big adopter and continues to be a leader in the space. So I'm grateful to have seen and tasted a whole lot of the legal tech tools, and I can see that things are going to change. I think probably there's been a bit of a lull, maybe the last 6 months, that there was a lot of excitement and fear about what it might mean. there's always going to be a bit of a settling as to which tools are most necessary and needed, and balanced against what the costs to develop or to use them are. But there's definitely some very exciting tools, and I think um, junior lawyers that are watching this will need to uh, be training in those, because I think that um, I can't remember who said it, but someone came out maybe a year ago to say that it's not AI that's going to take your job. It's going to be someone that knows how to use it that might take your job. So I think that's probably true in the legal space. Junior lawyers will be well advised to get across what tools exist and try to help their business to utilize those so that their services are more efficient.
Good point. Good point. And it's changing gears a little bit, maybe looking instead of the future to the past. Who has been your most influential mentor and why?
I think we can learn from the children, Cullen. Um,
Think of the
sorry,
children,
no,
Mark,
no, no,
please.
just the children in general as mentors. Uh, no, I mean, I've been grateful to work for a lot of great lawyers. So, I mean, I'm using the term mentor there. I have lots of people that I listen to and allow to kind of inspire me and speak into my life. I think there's been a couple over the last couple of years that, without naming, I think have been fantastic at asking questions, and I think I've become renewed in understanding the importance of really good questions to help a mentee uh, get to the answer themselves, and to realize and to learn. I don't think it's often. I think it's not really the role of a mentor to necessarily suggest or to direct, but a great mentor can ask the right questions to allow you to self-reflect and to learn. And so I think the best mentors I've had in the past couple of years, they've done that, and it's caused me to assess where I want to go. And yeah, it's always very exciting.
Yeah,
Even if they
definitely.
knew exactly where I was going to land, and it's just me thinking that I've come to the answer myself.
Ask the right questions. I like it.
That's
Very
right.
good.
That's right.
Life wisdom for the ages. What would you particularly like to see change in law, my friend?
Oh, I'll probably show my cards here as an employer representative lawyer. I think the current system, the safety net that exists for employees, can be pretty difficult for smaller and medium sized employers to get across. I think when we're
Yes.
in a world where we see very large employers with large in-house employment law teams continually making mistakes in terms of how payroll is done, and uh, how employee entitlements are rolled out. I think that is indicative that the system might be too complex, and I'm talking the interplay between modern awards and enterprise agreements, and the way it all works out in practice. Um, so look, if you ask in my dream list, simplifying how industrial entitlements in Australia work would be up there. Uh, and yet, the flip side is that the complexity means people need lawyers. So hey, maybe I'm wishing myself out of a job there, Cullen. But it's-
People will always need lawyers, Ryan. Come on.
maybe, maybe. I mean, it reminds me of that clip from The Simpsons where they're like, "Oh, can you imagine a world without lawyers?" And the lawyer goes into his thought bubble, and it's just people jumping around in a circle with flags and singing "Kumbaya," and he's like, "Oh, that sounds terrible."
No, we can't do that.
Shout out to Lionel Hutz.
Yeah, I love it. I love it, Mr. Hutz. And in terms of lessons for young professionals, someone's watching, they're a young lawyer, young professional, just about to start their career. What would you impart to them that you wish you'd known back in the day?
Um, Good question. I think uh, enthusiasm um, can make up for a lot of mistakes. I think when you're starting, um, you are not going to know many answers at all. I think the
Of
reality
course
is law school doesn't actually teach you much about the substantive law, but it does teach you how to find the answers, and it does teach you some skills. And certainly, College of Law is helpful in learning some other skills. But if there is a junior lawyer that is keen and responsive when I'm asking, because often I'll forget that I need to have someone help me on a call or with a task. If I put the word out and there's a junior that is regularly coming back going, yep, I'm available, let's make it happen. Uh, that enthusiasm, I think, speaks volume. And the other stuff you can teach. You can teach.
It's an attitude thing, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. So if you can, so in terms of how you would apply that as a junior lawyer, if you can actively show that you are interested in a particular area of law, and show enthusiasm for it, whether it's by reading the cases that come down or even watching videos posted by annoying walk and talk lawyers on LinkedIn. Um,
Yeah.
uh, th- that if that can find its way into discussions you have in the workplace, because you've got a genuine interest, that will only help you and is a bit of a superpower. Interest in your area and being enthusiastic, I think, is very helpful.
No, very well said. Very well said. And you're not annoying when you post your videos, Monami. I really enjoy listening to them. That's for sure.
Self-deprecating again.
Yeah, you have to be.
Colin.
You have to be. And I think it's good advice for the ages. And I think Jim Rohn once said, if you work at McDonald's and you just do the job, they'll pay you $6. But if you whistle while you work, you'll get paid $6.50. It's just the way the world works. Hopefully, people get paid a lot more now. That was in the 80s and
Hey, I
90s.
wish I knew that when I was flipping the cheeseburgers. I'm
Oh,
quite a whistler. I thought I was annoying people. Could have taken 50 cents an hour extra.
there you go. There you
That
go.
might
And
be a term
obviously,
in the enterprise agreement. I'm not sure.
we'll
Maybe.
put it in there. Put it in there if it's not. And this is a bit of not a morbid one, but it's more of a memento mori. How would you, when it's all said and done, Ryan Murphy, like to be remembered one day?
Look, it's hard to give an answer to this without being token, right? Like, if
Yeah,
I want my kids to be proud of me, and I want my wife to be, to be happy with with how I've been as a husband and as a dad. I think from a professional perspective, um, I I think I want to be someone that is able to help people understand difficult and overlapping concepts in a
yes.
simple way. I think to cut through the crap. Maybe don't put that on my gravestone. But see, if I could be known and have a reputation for being able to distill difficult concepts into a way that people understand, I think that'd do me. That'll make me happy enough.
I don't think loving dad, loving husband, there's still difficult concepts. That's a great epitaph. What do you reckon?
Sounds good. That'll leave me happy. It won't really matter if I'm happy by that stage, because hey, I'll be gone. But
Yeah.
if that makes it nice for someone to read, then awesome.
No, it's good. Well said. Well said. And you're already doing that, Ryan. So, look, really appreciate your time. Where are you hanging out the most before we let you go, my friend? Where can people reach you?
Yeah, look, I'm on LinkedIn all the time. So if you want to reach out, then please feel free to do so. Um, what have we got coming up? We've got a work health safety symposium that we'll put out details of, um, for those in Brisbane in October. I'm heading down to Canberra to give a presentation to public sector lawyers at the end of October.
Fantastic.
So keep on my socials and you'll hear about these kinds of things. And yeah, other than that, I'm just always happy for a chat. Reach out. Let's get coffee.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, we'll bring you back for some bonus questions. Thank you for adding value to the employment law community, mate, and wishing you the best of luck in your role as principal at McInnes Wilson, building the Sydney team. Well done, mate.
Thanks, Cullen. Thanks for having me on.
My absolute pleasure. And if you are a legend of law or know someone who is and would like to be on the Live with Cullen Haynes podcast, please reach out. We come out Wednesday, every Wednesday. We had a bit of a break, but we're back now speaking to a legend of law. We'll upload this to the podcast and you can consume it wherever you get your podcasts. Bye for now, everyone, and have a wonderful Wednesday. We'll be interviewing Darren Chinapper later today at 5 or 5:30, I believe, on our Ledger Legends podcast as well. So be sure to tune in. Bringing you back, Ryan, we got some bonus questions, mate. How would you
All
explain
right.
your role and what you do in law to either of your two boys, my friend?
I try to explain what I do to my kids as helping people solve problems about where they work. I don't know if that's suitable for an explain like I'm five, but I think that maybe that distills it. Kind of the concept of enterprise bargaining and protected industrial action is difficult for a 7-year-old to
Right.
understand. So
I'm sure
I
your
keep
two boys are advanced, but you gotta make it
mate,
easy.
they're advanced, but I know plenty of 40-year-olds that struggle to understand the concept around industrial enterprise agreements and protected action ballots. So yeah, no, I think everything to do with the workplace and helping people solve problems, I think, is probably a good way to describe it.
Good man. Good description. Second to last bonus question. How would your dog describe you?
Um, big man who I wee on. I think
And
he
enjoy the process and enjoy the
mate,
opportunity.
he's like what are we? We're probably 5 months now. I'm sure people are gonna hit me up in the DMs and say you've not trained him well enough, and that's undoubtedly true. But gee, he just wheezes, and it's particularly men if there's a deep enough voice. So I don't even know if he knows I'm his dad, but he any man who's over about 5'10" who walks through the door and speaks with any sort of depth in their pitch and timbre. Yeah, mate, incontinent as all get up, Mister Willy Wonka.
Well, if there is any dog whisperers tuning in on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, or
Please
YouTube, please help Ryan out.
help me with
And
canine incontinence.
yeah, absolutely. And hashtag no judgments. We had that with Alfie, the Labradoodle, who's now 8 years old, celebrated his 8th birthday the other day. I
Oh,
think
happy
they all
birthday,
go.
Alfie!
Happy birthday, Alfie! Indeed.
How's
I think he's
Alfie
got
go? Does Alfie just wee at the sound of your voice, Cullen?
not
Has he got
now,
through that?
but he
Okay,
definitely
great.
used to do it a lot as a puppy. I would say so.
Yeah,
They
okay,
get out
good.
of it a lot. Let me tell you.
Maybe there's something on the horizon I could look forward to.
Absolutely,
Right now,
absolutely.
we're just investing in antibacterial wipes because they are just we go through them like a toilet paper.
I'm telling you, they Pino Clean. They're the best.
That's
Don't
it.
leave home. Don't
That's
leave
the
home
exact
without
packet.
them.
There you go.
This is paid product placement for
Yeah,
sure.
that's right.
And last one,
Uh,
mate. If you could go back in time and give Ryan Murphy advice at any age, it sounds like you got some great advice anyway when you're in year 2 by Mrs. Caps. But if you could go back and give yourself advice at any age, what advice would you give yourself, and what time and what age would you go back to?
oh, um, I think some of the best advice anyone could give anyone is gratefulness, right? So
Mm,
showing gratitude for what you have. Now, uh, I think I've always been pretty lucky, and that my parents have always evidenced that and made that a bit of a practice. Um, if I could tell myself that at any age, look, I think that's probably a bit more of a mature concept. Maybe you don't really get that until you're through your teen years. So maybe I'm uh, telling myself that at the early years of university.
nice. Some great insights I would have liked to have gotten as a young person, because it's really hard to forget, you know, especially
Yeah, it
when
is. Yeah.
in where we live in Australia. Like you can take a lot of things for granted.
And I think it's so common, right, in our society, but I think it robs a lot of people of a lot of enjoyment because they're so focused on getting the mark for that next subject you got coming up, or so you care so much about whether or not you get that assignment in and what work is like, and I think you need to smell the roses sometimes and really appreciate what you do have.
Exactly.
Is that
I
getting
think
too deep? Maybe we're a bit too deep
Oh
for
no, definitely not. I think we can get into it. It's lunchtime, so people are tuning in, going, "Oh wow, that is deep," but
so
I'm
deep,
enjoying it. I
so
think
deep.
Wayne Dyer, the late great Wayne Dyer, who passed away in 2015, but he said if you don't have to be religious, but if you could say any prayer in the morning when you wake up, make sure it's thank you. And I think that's
Yeah.
a great way just to enter the day and say, "Thank you for being alive. Thank you for the body. Thank you for my family." Like if you just wake up and say those things, first 5 minutes, you are going to have a great day. I'm pretty
I love
sure.
that. Yeah. No, that's 100% true.
Fantastic. Well, again, thank you for joining us today there, Ryan, and donating your time. I'll let you get back into the wonderful world of employment law before you get back home.
Donating? I've been charging, Cullen.
Oh,
I was
no.
gonna send you an invoice.
Send it,
Oh, I
mate.
didn't.
Send it,
Oh
because this
dear.
is proudly brought to us by Legal Home Loans. Send it to Andrew Johnson, Director, Legal Home Loans, and he will get back to
Good,
that, I'm sure.
good. I should have done the cost agreement. See, I wasn't clear enough, Cullen.
That's it. Very
Thanks
good,
for
mate.
having
Thank
me,
you
mate.
so
It's been
much.
my absolute pleasure.
It's been great, and thank you for listening, everyone. Have a happy Wednesday. Make it count. All righty, my man. 50 minutes. Very good. Good length.
Thanks, mate. That was fun. Thanks for having me.
No, it was great. And like what I love about this, oh, here we go.